Yes, this is a hardcore grind interview with the dynamic comedian, writer, producer, Georgia Dawkins. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me back. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy. I know you'd be busy, so I'm glad that you were able to make time to come and talk with me on today. Now, listen, I love to talk about a go moment, right? So a go moment is when thought and execution come together. A lot of times we don't necessarily move our feet right away. And so there's always something in that moment that requires thought and execution to come together. So what was that moment in time? I want to go back when you decided to write your book. What was going on in that moment that made you say, let me do this?
Wow, that's such a great question. I love that, a go moment. I never really thought about it that way, but I knew it was time to go when the Lord spoke to me, and I just feel like it couldn't be anybody else but God to tell me to leave my dream job, and that was back in 2018. I was living in Atlanta, and I was producing a talk show that I helped create and develop, and I was just like, at that time, my job was my identity until that job started to make me sick. Like I feel like a lot of times we're in these situations where we have to find balance, and sometimes balance cannot be found, and hit a go moment, okay? So I felt like God showed up to me and told me not only when to leave, but who to call and when to call and exactly what to say. And that is when I put in my 2-week notice, and 2 weeks later I wrote a book in 8 days.
I love it. I love it. Now, it's ironic because when I met you, was that 2018 when we first interviewed you?
Was it Black Writers Weekend?
Oh.
I feel, or was it the Black Women Film Network? Black Women in Film.
It was Black Women in Film for Let's Chat Radio.
Yeah, that was 2018. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So
you caught me right after that go moment.
So a lot of people don't know the producer side. Let's jump in a little bit about that. What made you become a producer?
I love that question. And I'm just going to be real with you because I lied about this for a long time. But the truth is I love telling people what to do. I really do. I really like when it's my idea and I can be the one to pitch it. And then the team, like we run the play together and then it works out. I love being the ideator, or what they would call it in college was the gatekeeper. And basically that's the person who sets the agenda for what you think about that day. And traditionally that is news media, that is, the morning shows, that's, local news, and now it's social media. You got to think about when you pick up that phone and you're scrolling, now social media is the gatekeeper. Now you're the person based off who you're following. You're setting the agenda for what you think about that day. So you're the producer of your life. You're the producer of your algorithm. And my job as a producer is to be the one who sets the agenda. So no matter if that's a news show or entertainment show, I'm telling you what to think about. I'm trying to not only entertain you, but I'm trying to inform you and also persuade you to do something, whether that's learn something, buy something. It's to persuade you. So those are the 3 things that a gatekeeper or producer looks to accomplish.
Love it. I love it. So you were a producer at first. Now, I love the fact that we talk about Black media. What are your thoughts about the state of Black media as it is today?
I am still a producer. Once a producer, always a producer, but I still make my money producing. Being an entertainer is fun, but right now it's not the full-time job. So I love that I can fall back on that skill set. And I have been able to use that skill set to help build a lot of Black media platforms. Unfortunately, you ask about the state of Black media, it's the consistency and the sustainability. I think next to, Byron Allen and BET, there are not a lot of platforms, the Griot, Weather Channel being owned by Byron Allen as well, there are not a lot of platforms that have been sustained. If you think about the Black News Channel, I got to work with them when they were developing back in 2019, a project that was years, decades in the making. And then Byron Allen with the Allen Media Group bought them once they went bankrupt, So I think that was a very smart move for someone who owns Black media to continue to own Black media, because that easily could have been another platform that died, So I think we have to work together in order to sustain Black media. And I think first and foremost, we have to support Black media. You got to you got to go out of your way to support until it's in your face.
Definitely agree with that. Because in order for it to sustain, people have to watch. And I don't think a lot of times people understand the dynamic and the power that they have as a viewer. No matter what it is you're watching, that's a lot of power, and that you allow people to come into, people allow you to come into their world. And whether it's on live or on TV, that viewer power is something that is dynamic, and I don't think a lot of times we understand as a community what that means when we have those outlets. Now, a Black woman that can write is powerful. What does that power mean to you?
Wow, thank you for saying that, because I just feel like I'm a Black woman who be writing. I don't feel like it's necessarily my power, but it absolutely is. I've been able to write myself out of a lot of situations. You started this interview by asking me about that go moment, and if I couldn't put a story together, then I wouldn't have had the resources to build my own net. I had to build something to catch myself when I jumped. Now, I jumped out of a spiritual awakening or that go moment, but I still had to build something or have something to go to. So me being able to write my book was the first step to building Georgia Dawkins Media and being able to do the things and the consulting that I'm doing today. It started with first owning my story, and owning my story started with writing my truth.
I love it. Now, with Georgia Dawkins Media, you do your consultation, but you also have a new project. Talk a little bit about this new project you've been working on.
Yeah, thank you so much. Georgia Dawkins Media started in 2018. I launched it the same day that I published the book, which is like a tall order, girl. You're doing the most. But here I am, 6 years later in 2024, still doing the work. And right now, I'm working on the project that I think is the most important work that I've ever done. My whole career, I have spent my life telling other people's stories, whether that was at ABC News in New York City, Good Morning America, where I first started, or NBC in Florida, CBS in Tallahassee, and I've worked all over, and I've been very dedicated to serving the community, and now I get to serve the community that raised me by telling my grandmother's story. So a lot of people know that I'm Georgia from Florida, I'm GA, or, affectionately just the purpose producer, but I'm actually named after my grandmother, Georgia May, who was killed on Mother's Day in 1982. And she was killed in a high-speed chase by her son-in-law, and it was a domestic violence situation where she was trying to rescue her daughter. And this particular day, she was just picking my auntie up from work, and that is when all hell broke loose. And so I have spent my whole life, I say, living in the shadows of what happened to her. And now I feel like I'm strong enough and wise enough to finally shed some light on what happened to her and how it happened to her. And I'm doing it to inspire the other people in those situations, the other survivors of domestic violence. Because even though my grandmother died that day, there were other survivors. My aunt was shot in the head. She was also shot in the arm. And she has fought for her life. And it's been 42 years since the shooting happened, and for the first time, my family is ready to talk. And Black families don't like to talk about nothing, and they finally agreed, let's do it. Let's tell this story. We're ready.
And how was that process for your family, reliving that situation and that whole experience?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think that my family is still in that. I know that I'm still in it. I started officially working on the project about a year ago, and I started by asking each of my aunties and of my grandmother's children, and also my uncle, who's the baby of her 7 children, if they would participate. If they would allow me to tell the story, if I had their blessing. And then my follow-up question was, will you participate? And everyone gave me an overwhelming yes. And I just felt like that was another go moment, another sign from God, to tell this story and to do it with confidence. Because as I wrote in my first book in 2018, everybody knows the power of being in position. I started to tell my grandmother's story, but I also wrote in the book that I was scared to talk to my family and ask them to relive that day, because I can hear it in their tone and how they talk to each other that this is something that we have to face. And if it's something that we have to face, then other families probably need to face this as well. Other families have gone through traumatic events where maybe they blame somebody in the family, or maybe they're just so angry about the event that it divides the family and that it separates them. And what I'm trying to do is that the truth shall set you free, okay? So what I'm trying to do is gather the truth. We've never talked about it. And not only have we not talked about it, but I'm now taking the time to request documents, to do a Freedom of Information request. I have a team that's helping me put it together, because it's been 42 years and everybody might not remember everything. But if I talk to enough people and I get enough documents, I can put the truth together. So I feel like my family's still in that healing process, but that this is the closure I feel that is necessary to move forward.
Absolutely. So you've written a book. You are a dynamic mega producer and now a comedian. What inspired you to pursue a career in comedy and entertainment?
I don't know. It just kind of happened. Like, I knew I wanted to try stand-up, but I wasn't trying to make a career out of stand-up. I started stand-up in the pandemic, 2020, in Atlanta. I walked into an open mic right off the street in Midtown, still had the mask on, and I was like, I finally want to try some jokes. I have been writing it down on my New Year's resolutions every year for at least 3 years, and finally I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I've had so many people tell me, hey, girl, you need to try this. And I was like, oh, they're just being nice. They don't actually think I'm funny. And after I got on stage that first time, I was like, yo, I'm actually having a good time. And I can have a better time if I work on my writing. So I really worked on, like, story structure and also, like, performance. And that was 4 years ago. And now I'm just inspired to reach more people. And also to free myself. The more I own my story, the more I talk about my truth on stage, the more I'm healing.
That was nice. I like that. So can you share the pivotal moment in your career that significantly shaped your path in comedy? Because you've been doing some big things in the past year.
That's a good question. I don't know if there's, like, any one moment. I'll say there's maybe a recipe, and I think what I've learned is in comedy you need community. And because I started in Atlanta, I had the best community, like so many diverse comedians who some are urban and some are mainstream. I think that was a really good support for me to have. A pivotal moment, okay, I got you. A pivotal moment in my comedy career was, I would say it was Austin, 2023, and I think it was like late April, early April, late April, something like that. But I was performing at, I think it was at Cold Town. No, not Cold Town. What was that? Trying to think of the club, because it's a really good club that people love down there. I know it's a long answer. You might have to cut this out. But I was in Austin performing for the first time, and it was the biggest crowd that I ever had. And I want to say maybe it was 100 people. And they weren't just there to see me, but they were there to see the show. And it was when they laughed, that first laugh, I felt it in my chest. And I was like, yo, whatever that is, I want more. I don't know if it was like a taste of ego or like whatever. It just felt good. It felt right. It felt like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I was always supposed to be here, like, and I don't want to leave. So I love performing in Austin, but I feel like I've been chasing that moment of being on stage for the first time in Austin since I had it. And I performed in Austin twice since then. I go back a couple of times a year now.
Oh, wow. I love it. I love it. Now, your creative process. How do you come up with your new material when you're doing your stand-up?
I would say the first joke that I've come up with, and most of the jokes that I write come from conversation. It's real stuff that maybe I was dead ass serious talking to somebody and they started laughing in my face. And that person may or may not have been my therapist. So I was like, okay, maybe I should tell these stories to other people. And if they laugh, I'll just keep telling them. And so that's kind of where the jokes started. And then the more I tell them, the more I restructure the joke, the more the joke is formed into a better joke. And then I can build jokes off of that joke. And so I'm still doing a lot of the material that I did when I first started. It's just better now. The material is better, and I'm a better performer. So it feels different, and I'm finding my voice more, so that helps some of the new material come more naturally. And I'm also inspired by everything around me, like not just everyday events, but like experiences with my family, things that happen in pop culture. It's an election year. I mean, it's comedy for days. So yeah, I think that was a long way to answer your question.
Well, that was a great answer. When it comes to hecklers, a lot of times we watch comedy shows or we go to a comedy show and there's always a heckler there. Have you ever had those difficult audiences during your shows? And if you did, how did you handle those?
I be laughing at these people. I think they are hilarious. And also, I have the microphone. I'm still louder than you. Like, it's, I haven't been heckled a lot, but I think one significant moment was I was performing at Star Bar in Atlanta, and I was telling a joke about being catfish. And this lady in the audience was like, "What's your tender?" I was like, "What?" She was trying to like hit on me from the audience during my joke. And so I did my best to pull it in and just like use it, but I've learned to use it more than be defensive, because I feel like the audience can feel that. And it looks like it can feel like you're losing control once you respond with anger or in a negative way. So I always try to use that as material.
So she was trying to just have time, and you was like, listen, this is not what we're about to do right here. I love it.
Yeah,
I love
the
it.
joke was about being a catfish by an older woman, and so she was literally my punchline, an older woman yelling from the audience, trying to find me online.
I love it. Now, how do you collaborate when it comes to your comedy? Do you collaborate with other comedians? How does that work especially when you're doing a performance in like a setting for an event?
The collaboration for me has been very organic. For the first couple of years of my career, I was actually dating another comedian. So our whole relationship was writing jokes. So everything turned into a joke or a roast. It's just very, just comedians. Like, it's just always funny. So I had a constant live-in writing partner. So I'm kind of spoiled in that sense. I think a lot of people don't get that. But before I had that, I was doing online classes where, again, this is the pandemic, so people would just log into Zoom and tell some jokes, and then we'd do feedback. So I'm really big on feedback. I love feedback mics. That's a type of open mic you can go to where they will give you feedback before you leave. You don't even have to wait to put it on social media for nobody to watch it. You can actually get the feedback there and apply it to the joke immediately. And so that's one of my favorite ways to collaborate.
I love it. Now, balance is a necessity. How do you balance entertainment, writing, production? Like, you have a lot going on. How do you balance that and still remain Georgia at the end of the day?
Well, when I find that out, I'll write my next book, because I cannot tell you the answer to that question. I don't think I found it yet. I'm in search of that right now. And not even so much balance as much as harmony. I just want to be at peace where I am, no matter where I am. And so a lot of times I'll feel like I'm supposed to be working on this, documentary full time, but I know I need to do some comedy to balance the heaviness of the subject matter. So that's one way I've been finding that balance, but I'm still trying to perfect that harmony.
What's been the best advice that you have been given throughout your career?
Ooh, I love this question. It took me back immediately to the first executive producer at ABC News to sit me down. I can't even tell you this lady's name. I just know I was walking past her office, and I asked her this question, the same question you just asked me, what's the best advice? And she said to me, cover your own ass. I said, oh, okay. Like, I really thought she was going to give me some breakthrough, like, advice, like, girl, join this organization, here's the secret code, She was like, no, cover your own ass. And I really appreciate that, because the more I live, the more I learn that covering yourself and having those healthy boundaries is essential. And they say make copies of everything. Yeah, make copies of everything. Get everything in writing. So many people have played in my face because I didn't cover my own ass. I've been in so much debt because I didn't cover my own ass. Things I should have looked out for. And, in retrospect, in hindsight, it's always 20/20. But in those moments, I was like, this is a space. This is an opportunity for me to cover myself, and I didn't. So that's the best advice. I ain't take it all the time. I don't always apply it, but I do lean on it, and it does come back up.
So what would be that piece of advice that you would share with an aspiring comedian or writer or producer, something you feel that would help them along with their journey?
I tell everybody the best investment I've ever made in my life, in my career, in my wellness has been therapy. I don't care what industry you're in or what kind of artist you call yourself, you got to know yourself. And you got to have accountability. And sometimes the people around you are not going to be that accountability. So I pay somebody to tell me the truth, and I've been doing it for over 15 years. I've been in therapy since 2008, since I was in college, back when it was free. Now I pay out of pocket because I have a preference for a black lady therapist. And, they don't be in network all the time. So, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I don't always have insurance, but I've been working with my therapist currently for like 8 years. And I think I know that's the best investment I ever made, because when I'm depressed, when I'm going through an anxiety fit, that's impacting my money. I got to feel better. I got to feel better immediately. So I'm proud to have that accountability.
I love it. And that's so important, because it allows you to help get balance. I think a lot of times we want balance or we want certain things, but we don't have the tools that allow us to make that thing effective in our life. Mm-hmm. And so always having that outlet, someone there that can give you tools to allow you to be effective for yourself, not just for other people, but for yourself.
I would just add to that, mentorship as well. Not only having a therapist, but a mentor. Like, even for the documentary, I have a mentor who I work with every month, and just to check in, just on some accountability. In comedy, I have mentors. Like Roy Wood Jr. is one of my mentors. I can send him ideas, and get feedback from him. I just think having mentorship and community and therapy are the perfect recipe for success, no matter the industry.
Now, how do you stay motivated and inspired in such a multifaceted career?
Whew. I am hesitant to answer this question because I don't really know how to answer it. Like, I guess what inspires me to keep going is just the ideas. I can't sleep. Like, I'll think that I'm done with something or that an idea is done with me, and then it'll come back and it won't leave me alone. And next thing I know, I'm fighting myself. I'm holding myself back, from an idea or a project because, I'm afraid to walk in it.
Now, that's deep because so many of us have that same issue where, and that goes back to the go moment, because a lot of times we're very mindful about how other people do things, how they feel about themselves, the strides they make in their life. But then sometimes when it comes to ourselves, we deal in lack and fear, and we don't necessarily take those big steps that we should take. So that was really deep because that a lot of people are going through that.
Yeah.
And being able to just step into who they are and what they want to be. I think a lot of times, sometimes people have not committed to their future. And when you don't have a commitment to yourself long term, it's hard to keep balance in life. Because how can you commit to anything else if you can't commit to you? And so as we get older and we go through life and we bump around in the dark, we start learning how to commit to ourselves. And that is, I think, the most ultimate thing that brings anybody peace. Once you commit to yourself, it's like, listen, they don't have nothing to do with that. I don't know what to tell you. But that's not what I'm about to do. And it allows you to be true to you. Now, how do you envision your career evolving over the next few years?
Yeah, I envision over the next year being able to start production on the documentary. Right now, I'm in the development and financing stage. I would like to start filming by the end of the year. My family, the survivors I mentioned of the documentary, they're getting older. It's been 42 years, and I really want to maximize the moment as time is passing. As far as comedy, I hope to do more festivals. I did my first 2 festivals this year. I was accepted into 3, but I had to turn one down because it's expensive. So I'm looking forward to getting into festivals that pay me to come.
Right. Well, I can't wait. I know you are going to do great in anything that you put your mind to and place your feet on. I am so proud of you.
Thank you.
You have come a long way, and you have done so many dynamic things in that time. I appreciate you coming to share your time, space, and energy here with me on today. I want you to shout out all of your social media and where everybody can get in contact with you.
Thank you, Hardcore. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come back and to speak to your audience about my new projects. Y'all can keep up with me online. First and foremost, www.georgiadawkins.com. You can find out about all of my projects, comedy and film related, and also how to work with me as a freelance producer because, hey, who is hiring? I'm open to work. And so you can also follow me on social media at Georgia Dawkins on all platforms. I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much.